Welcome to Board Ghost, a story broadcast with games as the engine.
If living is a highway, then heaven is a bus stop. Been waiting for a minute there, but has it been forever? 'Cause dying don't agree with me, no.
We believe you're out there, hungry for stories for shared experience. We can't see you, can't hear you, yet we will play for you. This night's offering is a game, The Wizard's Grimoire by Vincent D. Baker. So Wizard's Grimoire is a game that was part of the Kickstarter zine push that they did earlier in 2019. Vincent D. Baker is the designer who brought us Apocalypse World and a bunch of other really good stuff like Dogs in the Vineyard. So yeah, this game is interesting. This is the first time playing it, so it's an experiment for us, like all good games we play. I will put up a rules primer for it, I believe, so there should be a pairing so you can learn how Wizard's Grimoire is played. It is a GM-less game in some respects, in that there is no role called a GM, but it is a single character game. So you have one person who takes on the role of a character, in this case, the wizard, and they have a goal and sort of a path that they need to take. And the other players, the other two players in this case, are the volunteers. They're the ones who answer questions and give the complications to the wizard. As their story goes, they provide the context for the world. They also have, I believe, one that's like barbarians. So there are a couple different games within this packet that they did. Maybe there might even be like 5 different ones.
That's right.
You can actually like also play versions where you have a barbarian character versus the wizard character and volunteers that are like guiding their
Adjudicating
stuff.
that.
Yeah. So that can get pretty fun. So yeah, why don't we, before we get into the session, the gameplay, story play, let's walk through character creation. So we should talk about who's here as we get into character creation. So our volunteers today are non-player characters, myself, John Holt.
And me, Ken Breeze.
All right. And our helpless victim, our player character,
Zach Norton.
All right. Welcome back, Zach.
Welcome back.
Happy to be here.
Cool. So, Zach, why don't you kind of have the player setup guide in front of you? Do you want to read the sort of flavor text in that opening paragraph, or at least some of it for us?
One morning, the wizard Abesta of the Two Courts undertook to create for herself an impeccable servant. For her rubric, she took the memoirs of Cab, of the House of Cab, extensive and exacting, and additionally she applied the maxims of Rulish of Fane. She considered herself free from irresolve and took pains to purge her seclusium of both remnites and plasmids. Still, the rubric evaded her. She created first a living form, presumed emotive, onto which she would later impel a prepared motivity. But it was not satisfactory. Its wire fingers twitched, and its cut stone eyes glittered with malice. She suspected a remnite, and pronounced several stringent purges with vigor, but the living form merely crooked its toes and made breath with its empty mouth. She considered subjecting it to a rigor with bronze prongs, or then a bath in cost, but could not spare the materials and stood in perplexity. Her prepared motivity in its glass bowl also showed signs of fraction. Ultimately, she departed her workspace, sealed it against the passages of time and corruption, compiled her notes into a signature, and arrayed herself for travel. To her signature she added a selection of useful magics to speed and comfort her on her way, and she set out for consultation with her mentor, the great scholar Wistride the Hour. It happened that this was the year 113 of the Faustian dynasty, which year saw the beginning of that dynasty's downfall and launched decades of war and famine. Much was lost to the world, and little that was begun in that year came ever to completion. Abesta of the Two Courts herself died at Hador, overcome by murderous ghosts set upon her by Justu the necromant, which we may speculate her impeccable servant might have readily dispatched had she completed her project. Her signature, preserved in good condition, was found later by treasure scavenger and added to the collection of a scholar nun of the monast. At that order's dissolution, it was sold to pay for rights of indemnification and funeration, and then stolen by a reaver in transit over the salt road of Brash, then carried to various parts by a variety of persons, some virtuous, some bold, some sly. By its particular and circuitous route, it has reached 4 centuries and more later, you. And so for you and your qualities, kind of going through the character creation here, you are a conjurer, a scholar, a rogue, an ambitious minor wizard. What's your name? What are your pronouns? And in this case, I am playing Yelaine, and their pronouns are they and them. You are yourself bold, cunning, virtuous, and ambitious, in measure. Answer the following questions and keep a running tally. Suppose that you face a dangerous obstacle. Will you confront it readily or take pause to consider your possible courses? If the former, tally 1 to bold. If the latter, tally 1 to cunning. And I think that Yelaine is a little bit more cunning. Suppose that your chance companion departs the table at the moment when the proprietor arrives to settle. Will you pay your companion's share? If so, tally 1 to virtuous. If never, tally 1 to ambitious. I think that Yelaine, being a student, or a perpetual student and scholar, probably has had to struggle a great deal. So let's go ahead and tally 1 to ambitious. Suppose that an upright cosmopolite delivers a complaint against you to the law. Do you suppose that you are wrongly accused? If justly, tally 1 to cunning. If wrongly, tally 1 to virtuous. Oh, definitely cunning. Again, having scruples is not the symptom of a effective would-be roguish scholar. Suppose that you come upon an enemy helpless and alone. Do you strike swiftly or announce yourself and give yourself an enemy an opportunity to explain themselves or make right? If the former, tally 1 to bold. If the latter, tally 1 to virtuous. I would only allow them to explain themselves if I very clearly had the upper hand, but I would give them the chance to explain. So let's add 1 to virtuous. Suppose that you have an unreliable companion who has happened upon an opportunity to profit and now requires investors. You have a measure of wealth set aside. Will you place it at their disposal, unstinting, or else count and calculate the risk? If the former, tally 1 to bold. If the latter, tally 1 to ambitious. You have to count those coin before you buy books, food, other secondary concerns. So let's add 1 to ambitious. Suppose that you have learned the hidden weakness of a potential rival. Will you exploit it now to eliminate the threat at once, or will you preserve it for future unforeseen use? If the former, tally 1 to ambitious. If the latter, tally 1 to cunning. So I think that Yelaine is going to think of the future. So let's say cunning, your qualities and your exertions. You are able, as are all living things, to exert yourself upon your surroundings against your enemies and alongside your allies. You begin the game with 6 named and rated exertions plus submission as follows. You may exert yourself empathetically to study and understand someone. Your rating is equal to your virtuous tally, plus 1. You may exert yourself magically to perform acts of wizardry. As play begins, you have access to just a few. You can look them over when you feel like it. Your rating is equal to 1. You may exert yourself mentally to study and grasp a situation's nuances. Your rating is equal to your highest tally, plus 1. You may exert yourself physically against the mass and momentum of an uncooperative or unsensible thing. Your rating is equal to your bold tally, plus your cunning tally, but with a minimum of 2. You may exert yourself subtly to pass through your environment unnoticed or to take action unremarked. Your rating is equal to your ambitious tally, plus your cunning tally, but with a maximum of 4. You may exert yourself violently against an enemy. Your rating is equal to your bold tally, plus your cunning tally, but with a maximum of 4. And finally, when you choose not to exert yourself, you submit to circumstances and just try to come out on your feet. Your rating is equal to your cunning tally, plus your virtuous tally. And finally, the Wizard's Grimoire. When play begins, you've come into the position of a magical grimoire, the signature of the wizard Abesta of the two courts. You know what it is, but you haven't unlocked any of its secrets. Have that document handy, but don't read it yet. The rules for reading it are strict. Follow them carefully. And actually, your goal in the game is the last one on this page. Your goal as player of the game is to see yourself into danger in the pursuit of your ambitions and maybe back out again. Not only to take the bad with the good, take setbacks with accomplishments, but to seek danger, failure, and misadventure out. Play towards it. When you consider downplaying the danger you're in or the trouble that's come upon you, embrace it instead. Once you've named yourself, tallied your qualities, rated your exertions, and set the signature of Abesta of the two courts nearby, without reading ahead in it, you're ready to begin play. Play the game in sessions, each a short episode that advances your character's ambitions, exposes your character to danger and trouble, and leaves your character in changed circumstances. For each session, you'll need to find 2 friends who will volunteer to play against you. They can be different volunteers each time. It's your responsibility to bring them up to speed and give them what they need to know in order to play. Be sure to hand them each a copy of the Volunteer's Guide and put a bestiary out for them too. Each session begins with a spawning circumstance. You choose your spawning circumstance from a list and then explain it to your volunteers to start the session. As you play, session by session, you can study and unlock the signature of Abesta of the two courts. This gives you new acts of wizardry and new opportunities for achievement. Track your progress through the signature. So the fundamentals of the game. Ask your volunteers questions. Don't wait for them to tell you spontaneously what it's like. Who's there, what they're doing, how it looks, where you might go, who's paying attention to you, who isn't. Whatever you're curious about, whenever you need to know in order to decide what to do, ask. It's not their job to say anything at all if you don't ask. Make the leap to action. Once you've asked your volunteers enough questions, say what you do and ask them what happens next. It's up to you to take the active role in the conversation. Tell your volunteers where you go and what you do, and then ask them what you see, what you find, how people react to you, who resists you, what they say, and what happens. Look for opportunities to exert yourself. Going back and forth casually is just fine for as long as you want to do it, but exerting yourself has more punch and gives both you and your volunteers stronger direction. Learn your exertions and don't wait passively. Seek out opportunities and take them.
Why don't we run through Elaine one more time? Just kind of run us through like their stat breakdown one more go before we get into stuff.
Okay.
Since we've done the character build.
Elaine is an ambitious and cunning and slightly virtuous, roguish minor wizard. They are able to exert themselves empathetically at a rating of 2. They are able to exert themselves magically at a rating of 1. Acts of wizardry allow Elaine to accomplish things and work towards the goal of understanding the grimoire. They are also able to exert themselves mentally at a rating of 4. They are able to exert themselves physically at a rating of 3 and subtly at a rating of 4. They are able to exert themselves violently at a rating of 3, and they are able to submit to circumstance at a rating of 4.
We'll get right into our session. Why don't you give us the spawn conditions?
Tell your volunteers that you are following in the trail of a troop of traveling marvelists, among whose number you believe to be someone who can help you with your studies. Take time to ask questions to set the stage, then begin play by catching up with their small caravan. Tell me, in this world, what constitutes a marvelist?
What is a marvelist?
Well, I mean, a marvelist can mean many different things. Someone who would be in a show of different abilities, sideshows, people who are there, they all have different abilities, but they sort of all congregate in one place together. I would imagine marvelists to be able to perform different marvelous acts.
Yeah.
What do you think, fellow volunteer?
I'd say, too, that they, at the heart, they're storytellers.
Mm-hmm.
And they use the tools, whether it's evoking plasmids or trickery to make it seem like they've evoked these things, and telling truths that may be as real as shadows as part of their story. They have all tools at their disposal. Some are mechanical tools, some are sleight of hand, and some are possibly true magic. But it's all in service of the story to draw the crowd and surprise, and at the end of the day, fill the hat with a coin.
There's a certain sense of danger. Is that why they are always on the move? Is like they're, I guess it's more a nomadic lifestyle where you want to take your show on the road.
Yeah, I think that like you're always looking for the next audience.
Yeah,
Like,
you're always looking for the next
you know,
audience.
there are so many ways to tell a story, but it doesn't always mean that people are going to pay for that new version. So
right.
better to leave them hungry.
I like this idea of truth telling as well.
So, with regard to the danger of this troop, does the danger come from within or come from without, or does it come from both? Is it that they have to leave because people have it out for them, or is there something very dangerous about the show itself?
They're a closed group. Like it's sort of the circumstances of being a troop on the road. They're very close knit. That makes them a family, and it insulates them from the outside a little bit. But they aren't well accepted by everyone. Like it's not a pure profession. Like it's not something that people want their children to aspire to be.
No, you don't want your kid to run away and join the circus. Like
Right.
That's not a thing
Right.
that most parents hope for. Marvelists, that's why I'm like, this danger question is in there, because danger has many connotations, I guess, but I like that they're bound by their pariahhood. It's not like these towns want these marvelists to like set up their tents forever outside of town.
Right.
Like you need to move
Right.
on.
Also, there's a reason why they set up outside of town.
Yeah,
Like it's not
exactly.
like they go and are led
Yeah.
into people's homes
Yeah, exactly.
and all this. They set up outside of town, and they may go to the town square and perform.
Yes.
But otherwise, like there's an acceptance for the performance and a hunger for the story.
Yeah.
But the players and the people who prep the play, the carnies or whatever you want to call them, there's something dangerous, possibly like inherent, that people perceive a danger in this like nomadic. It's a different kind of life too. It's just something. It's people that are very different, which is alluring, which draws people to the thing. But it's also frightening. It's a different kind of life. It's not settled. It's not pastoral in a nice like work the farm for generations sense. It's definitely a nomadic, a little more chaotic lifestyle. You're throwing your hands to chance.
Yeah.
And is that maybe also by virtue of the fact that they do work with plasmids?
Whether they work with plasmids or not is unknown. I think that is the danger that many folk think of, is that maybe these marvelists are rogue plasmids, or maybe there's something here that is dangerous, that could be detrimental or hurtful. However, I think that's the allure, is that there's this thrill-seeking sort of allure to the Marvelists camp. And so I like this idea that some, like they have like pachyderms with them, like they have different
Exotic
They have
animals,
exotic
yeah.
animals, right? Exactly. That there is this sort of foreign vibe to the proceedings. They wear different clothes. They have different rituals. They have different culture. Maybe a mishmash of culture, since they're all from different places.
There's like the food, the spices that waft from their camps, from the different varied foods they drink. The tea that they drink tastes different. It's exotic, and for some people that's frightening.
Definitely. And for some people, it's very alluring. When you talk about danger, I think that there's a range in the Marvelists. There are those Marvelists that may be more palatable to the masses, as it were, to most people, and they would like go into town and do a little performance to like entice people to come back to the camp, where the not as publicly palatable Marvelists are.
And there are also, I think, those who have like fostered an air of mystery.
Yes.
So they've like honed their mystique, and so you have a few figures within that crew that may or may not be powerful, may or may not be possessing knowledge, having a gnosis. And then there are those that, again, they could be putting on an air, and there are some that may or may not have killed people. Like is a good place to hide a group that's always on the move? Often, I think there are questions that are just not asked as long as you're as long as you maintain cohesion and loyalty to the group and don't do harm within the group.
And would Elaine be seeking out a name or just the troop itself? Or does the troop have a name?
The troop has a name.
Is it named after like the main person?
And that's sort of what I've been I like this idea that there are many mysterious mystical figures in this troop, but I get the sense that there is the one sort of focus. And so whether that be Barnum and Bailey, or whatever.
Madame Claymore's Traveling Mysterium.
Exactly. I think that's a perfect name, and we should just go with that immediately. Claymore has been something I've been thinking about recently a lot for whatever weird reason.
The mystical Madame Claymore.
Claymore is just so good.
Madame Claymore's Traveling Mysterium.
Yes,
I love it.
That's really good. We'll just go with that immediately.
All right. So what's the road like as Elaine starts drawing closer to the caravan?
It's fall, and this means that it's getting towards the end of their season.
Yeah.
They may actually be traveling to warmer climes,
where they winter.
Yeah. They may have like a camp. There may even be like a place where a bunch of Mysteriums or a bunch of these traveling groups gather. And
I even like this idea that there's maybe like a conclave, like a ritualistic gathering of these marvelists.
They're on their southern route, hitting. They may have another town, a day's ride down the road.
Yeah, it moves pretty slow. Chilly weather. The surroundings that we are in are a mountain range that they have to get over to get to the sort of southern side, if you will, or
they're coming into the foothills of this range. Yeah. It's an old, well-worn path. It's not off-traveled. It's pretty clear that, except for one other person coming the other direction with goods, trying to get across the mountains before winter comes and all that, you haven't seen any. There haven't been any other people on the road for at least a couple days since the last town.
And that begs the question then, how far is Elaine from home?
So the signature has referred to this Madame Claymore. Elaine has been attempting to track down Madame Claymore for a little while now, let's say like a month or two, and has finally got on the track.
Right. Like it had been stories told over drinks or a meal that turn into chasing down. Yeah. So it's just sort of town by town, like getting hot on the trail eventually.
And I like this idea that Madame Claymore has led them across the nation.
And kind of winding a little bit too.
Yeah.
They might actually even be a little closer than it's the furthest that they've traveled at this point.
Yes, agreed. They've had to like come back. So let's just say that if we're thinking in terms of like the United States, like Elaine is from like the East Coast, but is now on like the West Coast, as it were, in the middle of the country. They have traveled far from home, but not crazy far.
Right. And they may be like, at this point, if they were to ride hard, a few weeks from home.
Yeah, they're in a different region, but not in a different country.
As they draw closer to, or as I draw closer to the encampment, I would like to exert myself subtly to see what it is that I see.
So, and I'd say before we get into the role, even, let's fill in the scene.
The scene.
Yeah.
Okay. What time of day is it when they've stopped for this, to make camp and kind of begin this conclave? Or are they in the middle of the conclave?
No, they're still traveling. They're still on the road.
Exactly.
I think that they may be slowing. They aren't going to hit the mountain overnight.
Right. Yeah.
But
They're stopping in the foothills.
Right. But they're not like dead stop, it's like they crawl a little bit more. So what'll happen is the wagons in the front will actually set a camp, and as the other wagons catch up, that crew, the wagon that was in the front maintains the camp and feeds people, etc. And everyone kind of like, it's like this like they slow to a crawl, basically, even more. At the end of the come morning, that first wagon will have struck camp and become the tail of the caravan.
Right.
So
Right.
what you're coming up upon is it's late evening, for you, like have maybe even passed a couple wagons going up, but there is a camp that you're heading towards. It would have been the lead wagon.
Elaine, they are riding an elk, pack animal / steed. And so they finally have caught up to the tail end of Madame Claymore's caravan as they're stopping for the night. So it's dusty. It's that sort of magic hour time. The sun hasn't fully gone down. There's light in the sky still, but quickly fading.
Yeah, and I think the eyes to avoid to get even close to the camp are the other caravans you would have to pass, because word will travel quickly up the line.
Yeah. The caravans are overly loud because this mountain range, specifically these foothills, have like no vegetation on them. They have no like trees or scrub. They are also said to be a place where possibly Remnites make their home. It is a dangerous area, or at least that's what common wisdom says.
When I exert myself subtly, what I am trying to ascertain is whether or not these people are, and these kind of marvelists, are as dangerous as their reputation makes them out to be. So I'd probably like to observe how they kind of interact with one another, if there seems anything untoward.
Sure. Why don't you roll to see if you go unobserved, right? Would that be that'd be the subtle roll?
Okay. Hey.
Yeah.
Okay. Your elk picks its way carefully. It's a well-trained, smart steed, and there may be perhaps enchantments of some sort on it. You're able to kind of pick your way carefully and quietly towards the camp, towards the outcropping.
It's easy enough for you to off-road with your elk. So as they slow down, it's easy enough for you to keep pace with them even off-road,
Right.
with the swiftness
And
and surety.
as you get close to the camp, they're wary. They're being careful. Again, this is a place that is not, it's exposed and not super safe. And you see more than a few flashing knives. They are well armed. Watching them use the knives to prepare their food, they're well skilled in their use. And you even see a guy throwing knives into a
Definitely.
like what looks to be a rotted log or some sort of like actually a piece of carriage or caravan that had been like left at the side of the road. It looks like someone had probably replaced a panel in a cart and left it there. So it's this dried out bit of wood that they're just plunking knives into.
You also hear a number of feminine voices raised in song. They seem to be moving around the camp. You can tell what they're doing is reminiscent of true magic, but it is only sort of going through the motions. It's not actually conjuring anything or bringing any true power to this place, but it's almost like a song or a hymn of protection that they are trying to sort of bring to this place in their camp as they're slowly going around and delivering water to different drivers and stuff like that.
As I make out this circumstance, that cunning that Elaine exhibits is going to come into play. Elaine sees the flashing knives, sees the wariness of the travelers, and resolves to travel the mountain pass ahead of the troop and to set up an encounter with them during the day.
a difficult challenge as the sun is going down to travel at night in terrain unfamiliar to you. Definitely something, especially if the tales are true and this place has remnants about. However, Elaine, they are obviously very cunning. Passing the camp, they continue up into the foothills.
Perhaps I should exert myself mentally to find the best way.
If you think that's the best way to go, yeah. If you think that's
Yeah, I think so. I think that makes sense that you're going to try to pick your way through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. Once you're clear of the caravan, you find your way to a path that, like the road, basically. You get onto it and just ride along, and it's kept clean, it's kept clear. You don't run into much trouble. I think you find a good spot if you were to hunker down, based on how quickly you're riding and how quickly the caravan seems to run. You could time it so that they would hit you like early morning. After giving you time to rest and strike camp yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. Is you spend some time. Thankfully, there's no cloud cover tonight, and the stars and sort of the moon are lighting the land, bathing the land in sort of a glow. You're riding elk, though a little temperamental and ready to rest for the night, is sure-eyed and sure-footed as you calculate exactly how long it will take this winding caravan of marvelists to reach where you're going to set up. You do find a place amidst the rocks, some boulders to have a small camp, and that's right near a very sort of flat area that sort of has an overlook of the valley to the north that you're rising out of. You think that this could be a place for an impressive display, and you begin readying yourself.
I wait for the morning. I probably try to rest as lightly as I can. Right when I believe that they are fast approaching me, I believe if I perform an act of wizardry, that counts as exerting myself magically.
I think so.
That would probably give away too much of my own nature. I'm going to just kind of stand by the side of the road with the elk and await the caravan's approach. What do I see as they make it through the pass?
The lead of the caravan are two pachyderm, are elephants, arrayed in unadorned leather straps. They hold like cargo on their backs, though they do have riders as well, drivers. And so that's what you sort of see first, are these huge creatures sort of crunching up the road. Dust is billowing with every footfall, creating this cloud that they seem to be floating on. You can't really see all of their bodies or their legs. You're on the side of the road. The drivers are catching sight of you, but don't seem to be paying you as much attention maybe as you had hoped.
And coming up right behind these pachyderm is a one of the more brightly colored caravan wagons that you've seen. It has ribbons streaming on it. It's being pulled by 3 large bears, and there's a woman sitting in the seat who's just covered in silks of various colors and laughing and yelling forward to the drivers on the pachyderms and making them laugh.
As I kind of see this troop approaching and kind of the pachyderms making to move past, I call out, "Hark, travelers! Speak, friend! My elk needs water."
One of the drovers of the pachyderm looks over to you as they're sort of chuckling and going by. They are, so much higher up than you. They're like looking down at you like this little speck. They say, "Well met, good traveler. You are witnessing Madame Claymore's mystical marvelists. And unfortunately, we do not have time to stop. We must continue. But perhaps you could pull alongside. I don't know."
Or you could go back a couple days' ride and get some water down out of the hills.
Oh, Maurice, can't you see this poor traveler? This needs aid.
Lumpo can give you water. Hey, hey. And he hooks the elephant, the pachyderm, and it like urinates all over the ground. and he laughs. Maurice laughs uproariously.
Elaine is gonna play dumb and just be like, "Whose caravan is this that does not respect an invocation of a right of friendship?"
The pachyderm drivers, they have like crazy dyed hair, styled up to almost look like horns coming out, or like cones coming out in different directions on their heads.
Yeah,
They have
stylized tattoos on their faces. Yeah,
dyed beards of blue and yellow. They look clownish, but I don't know.
yeah. I mean, they're bare chested. They're
yeah.
wearing like silk belts around their waist, and it's clear that these people are pretty fit and muscular. And where they aren't covered in tattoos, you can see like the bright lines of scars. You do recognize the long knives on their belts as well.
This is all being sort of shouted quickly as
Yeah.
they are coming upon you and starting to almost get up to you. They'll be passing you soon.
They both look at each other and kind of laugh.
Yeah.
And they're like, there are different rituals for friendship in different places. And right now, I feel like we don't respect that right. We're observing a different custom.
But to answer your question, this is Madame Claymore's caravan. Good traveler. If you wish succor, perhaps speak with her.
Very well. I shall do just that.
Well, who are you? Who should we say is coming?
Oh, Elaine. Just a humble traveler.
And Maurice just looks back over his pachyderm and yells to the woman leading the bears, "Hey, Madam C, there's some bear meat up the road here if your boys are hungry."
Elaine will steel themselves, ride astride the elk, and try to keep pace with this troop of hopefully well-trained bears.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, you don't even have to. Elaine doesn't have to ride that far. I mean, the pachyderm are basically past Elaine and the beautiful, sort of, or colorful rather,
And
sort of
ornately decorated,
decorated. It almost has like a yurt on the back of it, almost like a hut vibe on the back of the caravan. It's rolling up near to you. You can see that the hubs of the wheels seem to be like painted like ruby colors. A feeling that this cart tells a tale itself. It is painted with different scenes and is very evocative of a woman who is well traveled and who has many beautiful items and who does seem to perform supernatural feats such as taming bears and dancing with bears. Perhaps even there on the cart, now that you're looking more closely, is the story of how these used to be men and women who were turned into bears.
Keeping pace with her cart, I turn to her and say, "Well met, I hope. Is it your company whose singing I heard in the night previous?"
You were keeping track of my camp?
No, I couldn't help but hear the echo as it came through the pass.
What is your business here?
I am but a humble traveler. I looked for water for my elk, and I wish to make a fine destination, but I am also a humble student.
She narrows her eyes, Madame Claymore, and gets a grin on her face that does not reach her eyes. It's a toothy grin. She actually slows her wagon a bit and watches you.
Her teeth seem to be stained a reddish color, possibly from some sort of herb that she makes use of.
Getting any headway with her may require an exertion.
Especially since her bears are sniffing and growling towards Elaine's elk.
And she doesn't seem to be keeping as tight a rein as you'd like.
Mhm.
Let's go ahead then.
I mean, that's an odd thing. There don't seem to be really any reins for these bears. She seems to maybe just talk to them.
So it sounds like I'm going to have to exert myself empathetically.
So what do you say to her?
I'm but a humble traveler. I was invoking a right of friendship, and I had hoped that I might make your acquaintance.
I've traveled these lands many, many times over. You're not going to pull any dyed wool over these eyes. You step back off the road and move on your way, or, well, I may have to show you just how outnumbered you are. I don't believe your motives are pure. You tell me straight why you're here. The smell of you is of a wizard.
I would tell you of why I'm here, but only if I could do so in private. You are more than welcome to rein my elk if that would give you security.
Anything that we say out can be said within speaking distance of my family.
And I think at that point I take the pack that has wrapped very carefully the grimoire and consider it a moment.
As you think and consider it, you are on the move. The caravan has not stopped. So
Yeah, she's
you are
continued
riding alongside her as you're having this conversation. And you're realizing that the sharpness of the gazes of her family, of her companions.
It's all steely now, yeah.
Indeed, very, very steely, as sharp as their knives you saw the night before. These men and women, different people, all seem to serve or take very seriously anyone interacting with their leader.
Yeah, and in fact, opposite her bear and wagon, a couple riders have appeared.
Yeah.
Hands on their hilts, still sheathed, but they're eyeing you warily.
Save one, who seems less concerned and more interested in you. The knife thrower you saw from the night before.
I think seeing the caravan kind of round up on me like this is a little intimidating, but nothing ventured, nothing gained. I will let slip the leather sheath of the grimoire very subtly so that only maybe the first line of that ancient text is seen on the cover, and just flash it at her and then quickly cover it up.
You said subtly. I feel like
Yeah, that's an exertion.
that's an exertion.
Absolutely. That one I'm better at. We'll find out. Okay. Yeah, subtly. It rolls under.
So no one else sees this
Yeah.
save her. You're successfully able to flash it at Madame Claymore without the rest of her posse or her family. Her
And she blanches at the sight of it. Just keep that away, fool child.
Have I earned at least a sense of an audience?
You may be earning your way to an early grave, playing with toys that you can't understand.
Perhaps, but when in doubt, I always would prefer to have an excellent mentor.
I'll train people to be the best they can, to flip and jump, to walk on tight ropes, but I'll not teach someone how to slit their own throat, hang themselves with their own belt.
What is one less humble traveler on the road to you?
What do you need to know about this thing?
I came by it honestly. It found its way to me. But I would understand why it why it made this journey, why it chose me. For I feel like it must have been some sort of choosing.
At this point, Madame Claymore, is waving away her companions.
Yeah.
In fact, you're realizing there are no reins that she has for the bears, but she seems to be holding tightly a coiled bullwhip that she's now using to shoo away the eyes of her outriders and guards.
Yeah. She does whistle to the knife thrower, who hops. He like leaps kind of deftly and like kind of dances along the backs of the bears to land in the seat beside her. And she actually opens up the seat behind this like door behind her and sort of slides down into her caravan and opens it. You see like a window open on the side, and she beckons you to come back around the back. The caravan's still in motion. The knife driver has taken on the lead of these bears, who he does now pick up reins.
And I think I'm going to go to the back and see if I can hand over the elk to one of the outriders and make my way over, or however we would kind of transfer that rein.
You hand the reins to someone who looks at you confusedly and shrugs and whistles. Hey, Cookie!
Your riding companion as well seems to not be taking it well. As you hand the reins to someone else, the elk starts like throwing their head, bucking. You're still on the back of the elk because everything's still in motion. You're realizing you lost a little bit of control over this animal.
In that case, I guess I'm going to have to exert myself physically too.
Yeah, I mean, it's tossing its head wildly. It's horned tines.
Yeah, a guy who's just wearing like a leather vest and apron, riding up, and it looks like unfortunately that's all he's wearing, but he is also attached to that apron and vest are these cleavers and knives, and he's got a mustache that just twirls off like a foot past his head on either side, and he's wearing a pristine white chef's hat, and he's like riding up on the back of this massive boar and towards you now.
Oh no.
And he's got a glint in his eye as he sees the elk.
And I think at that point, I say, you mistake my intention, and I'm going to exert my self physically to kind of ride forward closer to the caravan so I can get within earshot of Madame Claymore.
Yeah, I'd say the elk
breaks free,
but it's bucking wildly.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like, again, the acrobatics, this feat, the one who you'd handed the reins to kind of catches you, almost like adjusting your fall so that you land into the door of the caravan, like kind of twists you in the air. So you just roll into this cushioned, padded interior of Madame C's wagon. The door shuts and you hear "Sweet, sweet" as Cookie and them chase after your elk.
The elk runs off. Exactly.
Yeah.
The elk,
But it sounds like there's a merry chase being made.
Exactly.
I mutter under my breath, "Swift be your hooves." And what does the interior of this chamber look like? Hard, rather.
Yes, the interior has a very cool cave-like feel, almost like if the walls were made out of stone or brick or something like that. It's a little disconcerting as the heat of the morning, the heat of the sort of unprotected foothills quickly is replaced by this sort of coolness and this quietness as well. You do feel like you're in like underground.
Yeah. And you don't have a sensation of motion either. You can see through like these small slatted little windows that are like open right now, just these kind of like slats, that the hills are still passing by, but you cannot feel the sensation of motion.
Yeah, it's very smooth. Inside are rugs, many rugs on the ground that give it a very thick, sort of carpeted and plush feel. There are no sitting chairs. There are only like pillows to sit on. Other tapestries on the walls, silks hanging from the ceiling. A very comfortable feel.
Madame C pulls aside one of the tapestries and reveals a cabinet and opens it up, and there's a tea set inside. She pulls it out and begins preparing this tea, and soon the cabin is filled with this. She throws like a powder into the flame of this candle that makes it burn brighter and hotter, and the tea's boiling quickly, and there's this aroma, this spice that you've not experienced before, filling the
Yeah,
air of
it's
this
the only light
wagon.
in here. It's the only light because it's dim in here otherwise. The light's filtering in from the windows that are open. The tapestries and silks are sort of providing this cover that makes it dimmer in here.
Diffuses everything,
Yeah,
yeah.
diffuses the light. So now with this bright candle heating this tea, it's throwing all these shadows into sharp relief. And you can see that Madame C, that her face is unadorned by makeup, save for it looks like maybe some light eye makeup.
Like a little bit of coal in her eye. But she also, for as old and sort of like road weary as you saw her in the full light, she looks like full bloom, beautiful and young here. Like she is, for like with no makeup, she still has a flush to her face and her lips are full and she's strikingly beautiful.
Yeah, her hair is like bound up, but you think if she were to let it down, she would cut quite the figure.
Elaine very much resembles kind of a shambles at this point, just having been on the road this long, wearing dirty leathers and a dirty face from all of the road dust. I bow and say, I appreciate your generosity and your willingness to hear me out.
Drop the formalities, kid. Listen. You're carrying around something that, I mean, you're as good as dead playing with a weapon like that.
Well,
You're going to shoot your eye out.
Well, if the book found me, then if it very much is a death sentence, then I am one who is walking and existing on borrowed time. So why waste any more of it? I am a student of magic, and it must have found its way to me for that purpose, if not for another. And if I truly am condemned by owning it, I'd much rather burn the candle twice as bright.
Listen, leave this thing by the side of the road. Go back to the dusty tomes you still smell of. There are safer books back in your towers. Go hang out with your gray-bearded brethren and leave this be, kid.
Do you honestly think that if I had wanted to have anything to do with those stodgers, and I would have found a means of traveling you and on the road and followed rumor and whisper to get this far to make your acquaintance? You mistake me quite.
So I'd say I think you need to ask some questions. Like,
I think that at this point, this is kind of where we sense the motives of this woman. Is it out of genuine fear for me, or is it out of genuine fear for herself? What do I kind of sense here?
She's very cunning. You get the sense that she is trying to separate you from the tome, from the signature of a best of two thrones. It could very well be that Madame Claymore has more knowledge about the tome than she's letting on. Besides that, it's just very dangerous.
And what makes it so dangerous?
Its reputation has said that this grimoire is cursed. You have not believed that and have not witnessed anything like that. And in fact, you've learned things from the grimoire, learned magic from the grimoire.
I will open the grimoire, in fact, and I think I'll read a passage as if to study it and see how she reacts.
so you're going to try to study the grimoire.
Oh, yes. I think this is a very reckless. It's really more of a ploy to get her to open up and be forthright. And I think I'm just kind of flipping the tome open and seeing if I could read something. Am I exerting myself magically?
Yeah, it's magic.
Okay. Yep, just over. It is not a hit. On a miss, you become misled, befuddled, caught in false leads and false conclusion, and have wasted your time. Opening at random, what passage do I read?
Well, it would be great to know what passage you're reading. I don't even know if it's the alluring scent of the spices, the strange atmosphere, or the sort of cool observation, but you're sweating and the words dance before your eyes and you can't make heads nor tails of it. And it doesn't help when noticing your discomfort and inability to truly read any of this, the Madame Claymore just begins, like, throws her head back and begins laughing hysterically at your foolishness.
And boldly brings her hands towards you and just smacks the book closed in front of you.
But as she does that, because on a miss you become misled, if you're not satisfied with the outcome, choose one. Tell your volunteers that you have a shortcut method to study this, to wit. I've deciphered one word of power. I will speak a word of power under my breath, or almost half finish it as she clasps the book shut. I have presented Madam C with half of this word of power that I say that represents a shortcut, something that I've probably learned myself. How would she react?
We can come to a consensus on this, but one possibility is she reacts by like blasting him out the back door, or blasting them out the back door.
I like that. I'm fine with that.
Madam C completes that word of power, and because as it begins to leave your lips, she reacts instinctively and makes a sign with her hand, and the door flings open behind you, and you're sent hurtling out of her wagon and land rolling in the dust, barreling towards you, at a lumbering pace. These large, massive horses, pulling the next wagon.
So I think what I'm going to have to do then is to exert myself physically to avoid being trampled.
Okay.
All right. Just missed.
So you are trampled,
Fences.
kicked in the face.
You don't know too much of what happens. Like, you just see, you kind of like your dust blinking out of your eyes as the first foot comes to your head and you black out.
Yes, you're kicked in the head by a horse.
Yep. Hey, fine RPG tradition.
So you're blasted out the back. You try and get out of the way of the horses. You're kicked in the head by the horse.
I would say that I am definitely injured, but that I am not incapacitated. How about that?
Okay.
Cool.
So yeah, you're so this happens. The hoof comes down, but you don't black out.
Yeah,
you're dazed and grazed by this thing, and a pair of hands yanks you out of the thing and up onto the back of a horse.
Yeah, on the back of a horse. It's a strong a woman's hands. She seems to be like this really strong woman, marvelous in the group. And she sort of laughs good-naturedly as blood is sort of like coming down their face, a lot down Yelene's face. That's when there's this like echoing roar through the foothills. And Yelene is in a daze and has this weird flashback to studying the word of power that they just said, and realizing that this word of power might call different things to the utterer of it. A shudder goes through the caravan as the Marvelists hear this roaring cry, and then from over the foothills, a rock-sized vulture is showing up.
Yeah, massive bird.
A massive bird. It is perhaps even a remnant, a plasmic creature. It has red lightning in its wings and bile dripping in great drops from its beak.
It streaks down and falls upon the first pachyderm.
Yeah, like basically picking it up off the ground.
Away,
lifting it.
It screams, and its buddy wraps a trunk around its foot to try to pull it back down.
No.
So I would like first two things. Did I make any breakthrough or progress towards studying the grimoire?
I say with these like shocking horrors, you've made 2 insights on the first section.
Seeing and realizing that I have probably done a terrible thing or had a hand in it. First off, how large is this carrion bird, and or carrion plasmid, and how does it differ from a normal bird of prey?
I mean, it's a vulture.
Yeah.
But the frame of reference is it's impossibly large.
Yeah.
To you. Like it's the pachyderm is when a hawk grabs a field mouse.
Yeah.
It's got it's
That's what's happening with this pachyderm.
right. It is a massive thing. Its shadow as its wings are up.
Yeah.
Casts and covers almost the full train of the caravan.
And that's the cry that's going up amongst the Marvelists and their fellow travelers. Shadow! Shadow! As the sun is being blotted out.
Madame Claymore kind of looking back at you from the door of her wagon is cursing you and kind of looks up to the sky and begins barking orders.
Seeing this and kind of seeing an opportunity either to succeed or to fail horribly, I am going to once again use magic. And in this case, I'm going to try to do ominous dissuasion.
The strong woman who's holding you, her hair is cut really short. She's in sort of like spandex shorts, if that makes any sense, and like a sports bra. She's so muscled that she like doesn't have any body fat on her. Her breasts, her hips have sort of like melted into this muscle of her body. And she sort of has you in this iron grip around your shoulders as she's hefted you up.
So what does using the ominous magic do? Like, what is the descriptor?
So, ominous dissuasion. Tell your volunteers that you're reciting an ominous dissuasion. Tell them whether you shout it, hiss it, snarl it, scream it, whisper it, recite it coolly, or in another way of your choice, then roll. And on a hit, have your volunteers choose the effect. Your subject, startled and dismayed, flees. Your subject, chilled with dread, freezes and can only stare. Your subject, overcome with fear, falls at your mercy. Your subject, though terrified, keeps their faculties and stands their ground. They can and should take into consideration the manner of your recitation. I'm going to probably recite something that I deciphered from the grimoire without it. The intention is for it to come out coolly, but instead I snarl it at the creature.
So it's a miss. What does it say on a miss? You could try it.
They startle, and you have a moment to act. If you exert yourself physically to flee or exert yourself violently against them, temporarily add +1 to the appropriate rating.
And is this against the strong woman?
It is against the creature.
The thing drops the pachyderm for just a moment,
Yeah.
and it begins to like roll towards the other things downhill of the caravan.
Yeah,
I'd
that's
say.
exactly right.
So it drops the thing. It screams in the air, and
there are bloody rents on the sides of the pachyderm where these talons punched into it. I mean, it's sort of bleeding freely now down its sides.
right. And the vulture now lunges towards its true target, which is Madame Claymore's wagon.
Exactly.
So it's beating wings, like buffeting you, and even the strong woman can barely like hold on to you and her horse.
And the scent of like just stomach bile is just like wafting over you, almost like cloying into your nostrils.
And this pachyderm is starting to roll towards everyone else.
Sensing that this is probably either the end of my tutor or my potential kind of objective to my quest, or an opportunity for me to get away, I would like to exert myself physically, understanding the problem that I've caused and the little bit of virtue left. What I'm going to do is I would like to exert myself physically to try to brain it. I imagine that the strong woman probably has a throwing knife
Sure.
or a blade of some sort.
Maybe she even has like some horseshoes that she uses, to like play the game of horseshoes with.
I'm gonna,
But they're like bent, like they're
Yeah.
like hand
They're
bent.
hand bent.
Yeah.
as it begins descending towards the caravan, I am going
You're just
to
gonna throw a horseshoe at its head.
throw a horseshoe at its head, and I get +1 to the rating.
One chance.
All right, one chance. Yes! All right. I prepare myself. I have the horseshoe in hand, and I see it streaking towards the cart. And I am quickly calculating trajectories, things that I learned at my study of magical arts and things like geometry as well as more mystical arts. And I see its one bulging carrion eye.
Oh.
And I hurl it.
Yeah, and it flies in an arc, and it's a heavy horseshoe, and you're a simple wizard, and it lands at the feet of Madame Claymore, and she looks at you and gets like a spark of like, you see a light bulb in her head, and she takes a ribbon from her hair, this like gold braided ribbon, and pulls it out in her hair, this black flowing hairs everywhere, and it's sort of rising in the wind, and she wraps it around the horseshoe and whips it up and out, and the rock, this vulture thing's head whips and it follows this horseshoe off into the distance and away.
How does she look at me after the dust has settled?
There is like a maternal scolding.
I don't know,
No?
dude. I
No?
mean,
What do you think?
this is
think?
so.
You think
She
there's
just
a
brought-
death in her eye? Like,
It's like you just
execution time?
endangered me and my
Execution
family.
time?
I think she looks back at you with like,
Put them in chains.
I think she's like in pure adrenaline rage mode still.
Rage mode.
Her like
So-
people are crying, like
Yeah.
people are still up in arms, and you're lucky that worked out.
Yeah.
Pure rage in her eye.
Yeah, the horseshoe went further than even the strong woman could throw it. As she
Right.
whipped out her sort of like hair a ribbon and got it around there, almost like a sling. She was able to
Right, and the ribbon was
propel
still
this
attached to it. So it's almost
Yeah.
like it was
Exactly.
whatever was drawing this creature to her is now drawing
almost
it
like
to
a
the-
comet. The ribbon sort of had a tail on the back of the horseshoe as it just flew so far away into another part of the foothills that this Remnite creature is following it there. She rounds on you, and yeah, you can just see that she's fuming, angry. She commands her strong woman Delphi to take you in hand.
All right.
All right. And we'll interrupt our story here and continue in our next communique. I was one of your players, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho and on Instagram at board_ghost. And yeah, Ken, where can people find you?
At Board Ghost, find me, Ken, at Burling's Beard, BERLINGS Beard, on Twitter and Instagram. I am a New York City-based creative, content creator, and game master for hire. So if you're looking for a game master to run your games, please do contact me.
All right. And Zach, where can people find you?
On Twitter and on Twitch, you can find me at Great Zamino, ZAMINO. And I am currently the GM of The Hole in the World, an Invisible Sun live play, streaming every other Sunday on Twitch at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Manapot Studios.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming on. So we're entering into October, so hopefully you guys are far along in your campaign and things are going good in the world of Invisible Suns. All right. So to find out more about the engine and story, engine in our story and the players, go check out boardghost.com. Attempt to pierce the veil and contact us at BoardGhostWorld on Twitter. Shout out to the Ether if you have desires we can fulfill. We'd like to thank Pat Couples for our theme song and interlude music. You can find more about Pat at patcouples.tumblr.com or on his band's website, hotelsandhighways.com. If you're not alone in the void, share our stories. The more they're consumed, the truer they become.
Dying don't agree with me, no. Dying don't agree with me.